I wanted to, like I say, take this time to discuss some things in reference to our purpose here. Part of her experience has been going to raw diet. And raw diet was not something that was accepted by all communities. You know, it's something that over time and research and seeing the benefits that it has for people, that people are finally accepting that that is something that people of all complexions can enjoy. It is something that we all should consider. How was that journey though for you? Like going into that and being the only person in your household, right? That actually eats that way. What was some of the adjustments you made as far as mindset and implementing it?
It takes a lot of time. Like I have to plan very carefully where I stay. Whenever I stay at a hotel, it has to have a kitchen so that I can have access to a full-size refrigerator. My morning starts off with a 64-ounce pitcher of smoothie, some of which is here. This one is full as well. So I drink all of that throughout the day. I end up with a total of about 96 ounces of water a day. Then I usually have snacks like pico de gallo. I eat a lot of guac. I eat a lot of avocado. And then I have a huge salad at night with as much stuff as I can put in there.
To get your viewpoints on the simple strategies that especially Black women, women of color, those in marginalized communities can do. Where is it that they can start besides gut health? Because we know gut health. She got us there yesterday. But besides gut health, where would you recommend that a person start?
But I would say you could start with your diet. You can make simple shifts in your diet, do what you're able to do, and see how your body responds.
I had my first colonoscopy when I was 35 because I was having unusual abdominal pain, and that was, that's not where I normally would have pain, And so because my stepdad had pancreatic cancer and it started out with that little pain that he just didn't know why it was there, that finally led to it. I was like, okay, I'm getting this little pain. I've got a family history of colon cancer, breast cancer, all, cervical cancer, all of the cancers you can imagine. Let me go in because I also was noticing other symptoms that when you need a colonoscopy that will take you. I just won't say that's now because we're eating.
I was doing the exact same thing with all the ibuprofen because my periods were so painful and I was not diagnosed with the endometriosis. It took a while to get there. But because I was taking so much of it, it caused a lot of upper GI issues, and I ended up in the emergency room with gastritis at one point. So my primary care doctor put me on Dexilant, which is a proton pump inhibitor, medication that, like Nexium or Meprazole, you can get those over the counter. And those medicines are only meant to be short term. And I was on it for 7 to 8 years. Well, it turns out the Dexilant was the thing that ultimately triggered lupus. Because, you have to have the genetic component and your diet and the stress and, it was a perfect storm of a lot of things, but the Dexilant is what tipped it over.
Wow, what a testimony, because that's what similarly happened to you, Ashley, was not only is she an RA warrior, rheumatoid arthritis warrior, she also had drug-induced lupus, which she would not say the word when I first met her. She was like, I'm not even going to take this because I was not supposed to have this condition. But what was that experience like for you? That something you were taking that was supposed to help you actually triggered a worse, more challenging condition?
It was very frightening. And I'm just thankful that my rheumatologist kind of kept an eye out on my numbers, because I think she knew that it was a possibility that would happen when I started that infusion. And so she was like, we're going to start this infusion, and it was meant to help to stop the progression of my RA. but it ended up triggering my lupus markers, which were off the charts. Now, praise God, I didn't have the symptoms for it. Like, I didn't have any symptoms of lupus, but I tested highly positive for it. And so she immediately took me off of that medication and started me on something different, which I've been taking that. Now I take a Orencia, an injection of Orencia. So it's a biologic. So I've been doing that for the last 6 years. So just last year, I finally had no signs of the lupus. So, was able to kind of reverse that. And honestly, I think I credit that, of course, to God for sure, but also with, my nutrition and just really just being mindful and focusing on what I can do.
Doctor standpoint, in medical school, we are taught zero about nutrition. Nothing. Zero. I was so mad when I was diagnosed that I had no idea that what I was eating could potentially cause a deadly disease. We get zero about nutrition, but we get 2 years of how to prescribe medication. And when you go, I remember when I was first diagnosed, I asked my rheumatologist, is there anything that I can do as far as my diet is concerned that would help? He said no. And that was not the truth. And it wasn't until a couple years later that I discovered Food Revolution Network and Dr. Goldner that I started to realize that that was not the truth. And so as a physician, I make sure that I tell my patients, you need to watch what you're putting in your body, because even though some doctors are going to tell you that it doesn't matter, it absolutely 100% matters.
Gut health, diet is very important. We've just learned that there's more to gut health than just diet. For those of us, and I'm a whole registered nurse of almost 20 years, and that helped me a lot to know that there's more that I need to research personally, but also do, which is get those labs done. So that's something I would like to introduce to people, is a gut health versus diet type of thing, that we can potentially even do a blog post that will explain that, that difference and what are the key things you need to look into.
To your point, we're not taught this in nursing school. I've been a nurse since 2011, nurse practitioner since 2018. I just found out myself about functional medicine just coming across someone on social media and listening to her story, and then doing more research myself, looking into different programs and doing some different programs. We weren't taught this at all. And so sometimes you wonder, why didn't my doctor tell me this? It's because they weren't taught that.
When I was diagnosed with hidradenitis suppurativa, it was just a diagnosis, right? The doctor said, this is what it is, and he walked out the room. At that point, I was 13 years old. And so before that, I was misdiagnosed. They thought it was an issue with my blood. I went to a doctor to get my blood cleaned, and then they told me what it was. It wasn't until 20 odd years later that I ran across people who were like, you can control this with your diet. Like, you can switch, food. There are certain foods that will be triggering you. And switching my diet, seeing a drastic change in the flares, the odor, the healing of like my body actually being able to heal and not constantly being open. And then when I talked about it online, with other warriors, and people are like, wait, there's foods that we shouldn't eat, there's foods that we might avoid. And it's just so much in the community still of like, people don't realize that a lot of this can be controlled with what you eat.